Russ and Linda's story begins with the simple act of writing a letter, but within that letter is an entire world of struggle, hope, and perseverance that mirrors the experiences of countless American families. They are not political analysts or policy experts. They are ordinary people living in Texas, trying to make sense of the challenges life has placed before them. When they decided to write to the president, it wasn't out of desperation alone. It was also out of a desire to be seen, to be acknowledged, and to feel that their circumstances mattered to someone who had the power to influence change. Their message captures the emotional weight of living in a time when economic pressures seem to grow heavier each year, when healthcare feels like a distant luxury rather than a basic right, and when working hard no longer guarantees stability or peace of mind. Russ speaks of long hours, unpredictable shifts, and the exhaustion that comes from giving everything to a job that still leaves bills unpaid. Linda expresses the emotional toll of watching her household balance on a fragile line, where one medical emergency or financial setback could unravel everything they've worked for. Their words are filled with a quiet fear, the kind that so many Americans learn to carry silently, but also with an unwavering sense of responsibility for their family and community. Through their letter, Russ and Linda reveal the emotional landscape of families who feel they are doing everything right yet still falling behind. They describe the constant calculation that goes into every choice, deciding which bill must be paid first, which medication can be put off for a few more weeks, and which dreams must be postponed yet again. It is not the dramatic kind of suffering that makes headlines, but rather the quiet, persistent grind that wears people down over time. Their experiences speak to a broader truth about millions of households facing similar realities, families caught in the gap between what they earn and what life demands. Their story highlights how economic stress does not exist in isolation. It seeps into relationships, health, and emotional well-being. They describe arguments sparked not by lack of love, but by overwhelming pressure. They mention the exhaustion that lingers long after the workday ends, making it difficult to find joy in small moments. And yet, even in their most painful admissions, there is a sense of resilience that defines who they are. Writing to the president is an act of courage for them, not because they expect an immediate solution, but because they believe in the importance of being heard. It is a reminder that behind every statistic about unemployment, healthcare costs, or economic downturns, there are human faces like Russ and Linda who feel the full impact of those numbers. They want leaders to understand that families like theirs are not asking for special treatment. They are asking for fairness, for opportunity, and for a system that does not punish people for falling sick or struggling financially. Their story captures the emotional toll of uncertainty, the anxiety that shows up in everyday decisions, and the effort it takes to stay optimistic when life feels unpredictable. At the same time, their letter reflects an enduring trust in leadership and the democratic process. They believe that sharing their truth might contribute to a broader conversation, that their words could help shape policies that make a real difference for families across the country. As Russ and Linda express their concerns, they also express gratitude. They acknowledge the president's willingness to listen to the voices of ordinary citizens and appreciate the humanity behind the office. This reveals something important. People do not simply want policies, they want connection and compassion from the leaders who represent them. Their appreciation is rooted in the simple idea that leadership is not just about making decisions. It's about understanding those whose lives are affected by those decisions. Their letter is infused with the belief that empathy from leaders can restore faith in the system and inspire hope even in difficult times. Ultimately, Russ and Linda's story demonstrates the power of personal narratives in shaping national awareness. Their willingness to open up about their struggles shows that the most meaningful political conversations do not start in conference rooms or press briefings. They start in homes, in kitchens, in late-night conversations between spouses who are trying to figure out how to move forward. Their letter is more than a message. It is a reflection of a broader American experience, one defined by hard work, resilience, and the desire for a future that feels secure. Through their words, they remind us that the challenges faced by ordinary families are not abstract issues. They are daily realities that deserve attention, understanding, and action. Russ and Linda's letter also shines a light on the deep importance of compassionate leadership, showing how vital it is for people to feel that those in power genuinely care about their lived experiences. In their writing, it becomes clear that what they desire is not only policy change but also acknowledgement, a simple recognition that their struggles matter. When they address the president, they are reaching out with the belief that leadership begins with listening, that real progress can only happen when those responsible for shaping national direction understand the human stories behind every statistic. Their letter expresses a longing for leaders who do not see citizens merely as numbers, but as families, parents, workers, and individuals trying their best to navigate life's challenges. By sharing their story, they underline that compassion in leadership is not just an emotional quality, but a practical necessity. It shapes how policies are formed, how decisions are made, and how national priorities are set. They emphasize that when leaders take the time to hear from everyday Americans, it builds a bridge of trust. Russ and Linda describe how disconnected political debates can sometimes feel, especially when they seem far removed from the daily realities of people like them. They explain that political speeches and televised discussions rarely capture the tension of sitting at a kitchen table late at night, trying to calculate how to stretch a paycheck. They rarely reflect the feeling of helplessness that comes from dealing with health insurance claims, surprise medical bills, or rising living costs. Russ and Linda believe that compassionate leadership means leaders must not only understand these hardships intellectually, but also feel their weight emotionally. They express that empathy from the president or any leader gives people reassurance that their voices matter, that their struggles are not invisible, and that someone in power is advocating for them. Their letter also reflects the idea that compassionate leadership inspires hope. When people see that their leaders genuinely care, they feel more encouraged to engage, to participate, and to believe in the possibility of change. Russ and Linda's hope does not come from blind optimism. It comes from witnessing moments when leaders take time to acknowledge the stories of ordinary citizens. They mention how reading letters from real people allows leaders to stay grounded, to remember the human side of policy making, and to understand that every decision affects families in profound ways. Through their message, they bring attention to the fact that empathy has a ripple effect. When leaders show compassion, it influences how communities interact, how people support one another, and how national conversations evolve. Compassion becomes a force that brings unity instead of division. Furthermore, Russ and Linda highlight that compassionate leadership requires courage. It is not always easy for leaders to confront the realities shared by citizens, especially when those realities reveal systemic shortcomings. Listening to difficult stories means acknowledging areas where the system has failed, where policies need revision, or where more support is necessary. Yet Russ and Linda argue that this courage to listen and respond is what defines true leadership. They believe that a president who takes the time to engage with the personal struggles of citizens demonstrates a commitment not only to governance but to humanity. This approach strengthens the relationship between the government and the people, making governance feel less distant and more like a partnership. Their letter also serves as a reminder that leadership is not solely about power, it is about responsibility. Russ and Linda talk about how they want leaders to understand both the challenges and the aspirations of American families. Compassionate leadership acknowledges the dreams people carry, the desire to provide for their families, to stay healthy, to feel secure, and to build a better future. It means creating policies that reflect these hopes and ensuring that no one feels forgotten or left behind. Russ and Linda's words show how meaningful it is for families when leaders actively show that they care, when they demonstrate that they are listening and willing to act. In the end, the couple's message highlights that compassionate leadership is as essential as economic or legislative strategy. It is the foundation that allows people to trust the system and believe in their leaders. Their letter reminds us that empathy is not a weakness in governance, but a powerful tool that can shape the nation's direction and heal divides. Russ and Linda write with the hope that their voices, and the voices of millions like them, reach leaders who are willing to understand, reflect, and act with both wisdom and compassion. Through their words, they reveal that at the heart of a strong nation is leadership rooted in humanity, and that true progress begins when leaders listen to the stories of their people. Russ and Linda's letter also brings into sharp focus the heavy intersection of healthcare struggles and economic insecurity, two issues that shape the daily lives of millions of Americans and often determine the quality of their future. Their message paints a vivid picture of what it feels like to live in a system where access to healthcare is deeply tied to financial stability, and where one unexpected illness can spiral into long-term financial hardship. They describe experiences that are painfully common: rising insurance premiums, medical bills that seem to grow faster than wages, and the constant stress of having to decide between caring for their health and protecting their financial survival. For them, healthcare is not a political debate. It is an emotional, personal, and overwhelming reality that affects everything from their peace of mind to their long-term hopes. Their words are not abstract. They reflect the everyday decisions of families who feel trapped in a cycle where getting sick has consequences far beyond the pain itself. In their letter, Russ and Linda explain that even routine healthcare feels out of reach. They talk about putting off doctor visits because the copay is too high, skipping medications because they must prioritize rent or groceries, and trying home remedies to avoid costly appointments. This constant trade-off becomes a way of life, and they describe how it chips away at their sense of security. Knowing that one emergency room visit can wipe out months of savings creates a level of stress that never fully goes away. Russ mentions the fear that arises every time he feels chest pain or a sharp ache, not because he fears the illness itself, but because he fears the bill that will follow. Linda recounts the emotional burden of caring for sick relatives while knowing that every treatment, test, or procedure brings them closer to financial instability. Their lives become a delicate balance between maintaining health and avoiding financial catastrophe. This struggle also ties directly into their economic concerns. Russ and Linda explain that the rising cost of healthcare is not isolated. It is part of a larger pattern where wages struggle to keep up with the cost of living. They see friends and neighbors working multiple jobs, not to get ahead but simply to stay afloat. Healthcare becomes another bill to fear, another challenge that pushes families closer to the edge. Their letter describes how these pressures affect their mental and emotional well-being. It's not just about money. It's about the constant worry, the sleepless nights, the arguments sparked by anxiety, and the feeling of being trapped in a system that doesn't protect them. They express how exhausting it is to feel like they're doing everything right, working hard, budgeting carefully, planning ahead, yet still falling behind because the basic cost of staying healthy is beyond their reach. Russ and Linda also reveal how deeply interconnected healthcare and work have become for families like theirs. They describe the stress of staying at a job they dislike or that wears them down physically, simply because the health insurance it provides is too valuable to risk losing. This creates a sense of entrapment. forcing them to choose between their well-being and their financial stability. Linda talks about friends who stay in toxic workplaces because leaving would mean losing coverage. Others delay retirement despite physical exhaustion because they cannot afford private insurance. These stories highlight a system where healthcare is tied so heavily to employment that it limits freedom, flexibility, and personal growth. Their letter also touches on the emotional impact of watching loved ones struggle. They recount stories of neighbors who lost everything after a single medical emergency, families forced into debt because of surgeries or chronic illnesses, and older relatives who ration medication to make it last longer. These experiences shape how Russ and Linda view their own future. They worry not only about their health today, but also about how they will survive as they age. They wonder whether they will be able to retire, whether they'll have access to affordable care, and whether they will become a burden on their children. Their fears reflect a much broader concern among Americans who feel unprepared for the rising cost of long-term health care. Yet despite their struggles, Russ and Linda do not write with bitterness. Instead, they write with a sense of urgency and hope. They believe solutions are possible, and they want leaders to understand the personal impact of healthcare policies. They hope for a system where treatment does not come with financial punishment, where preventive care is accessible, and where families do not have to choose between health and survival. Their message is a reminder that healthcare is not just a policy issue. It is a human issue that touches emotions, relationships, and dreams. Through their story, they illustrate why healthcare reform matters not just economically but morally. They want leaders to see the real consequences of inaction and the transformative potential of compassionate, thoughtful solutions. In sharing their struggles, Russ and Linda speak for millions who face the same battles. Their letter stands as a powerful example of how healthcare and economic stability are woven together, shaping the lives, decisions, and futures of ordinary Americans. Their experiences underscore the urgent need for understanding, empathy, and meaningful reform that prioritizes human well. Russ and Linda's letter also expresses a deep and sincere desire for hope, solutions, and meaningful change, something that goes far beyond complaints or frustrations. What stands out most in their message is that they are not merely pointing out problems. They are reaching out with the belief that solutions are possible, that progress can happen, and that their voices might play even a small role in shaping the direction of the country. Their letter reflects the emotional landscape of countless families who continue to hold onto hope even when circumstances feel overwhelming. They believe that leadership, when guided by empathy and determination, can create policies that offer relief, stability, and opportunity. This hopefulness doesn't come from ignoring their struggles, but from acknowledging the resilience they've built through years of hardship. And yet, despite the weight of their challenges, Russ and Linda choose to believe in a better future, not just for themselves, but for families across America facing similar obstacles. In their letter, they speak about hope in a way that feels real and grounded, not idealistic or distant. They describe how hope looks in their everyday lives, the hope that their children will have access to education and health care without the financial stress they endured, the hope that working multiple jobs will no longer be necessary to survive, and the hope that future generations won't have to choose between paying medical bills and putting food on the table. Their message is infused with a profound longing for stability, something they feel slipping further away as economic pressures increase. Yet, even as they acknowledge their fears, they emphasize that hope is the force that keeps them moving forward. It's what makes them write letters, participate in discussions, vote, and stay engaged with the decisions being made at the national level. Their hope is not passive, it is active, intentional, and full of determination. Russ and Linda believe deeply in the power of solutions, not just sentiments. They express a desire for concrete action, policies that address healthcare affordability, economic inequality, job security, and education access. They want a government that doesn't just talk about solutions, but implements them in ways that genuinely improve lives. Their letter reflects frustrations with systems that feel complicated, slow, or out of touch with the needs of ordinary families. Still, they maintain a belief that thoughtful leadership can make real change possible. They discuss simple yet urgent desires: affordable health care that doesn't require them to drain their savings, wages that reflect the rising cost of living, and community support systems that help families recover from setbacks instead of punishing them. Their hopes are neither unrealistic nor excessive. They are the basic necessities every family needs to feel safe, respected, and supported. What's striking is that Russ and Linda do not view themselves as exceptions. They write with the understanding that their concerns are shared by millions of others, which is precisely why they want action. They want their leaders to see the bigger picture, to recognize that their letter is not just the story of one household but a reflection of national struggle. They mention how neighbors, coworkers, and relatives face similar issues: people losing homes due to medical debt, families working long hours yet still unable to save, and young adults drowning in educational or financial burdens. Their call for hope and solutions is not selfish. It is empathetic and community-oriented. They want progress that lifts everyone, not just a select group. Their letter also reveals a powerful emotional truth: hope is fragile. Russ and Linda admit that there are days when hope feels distant, when the burden of life becomes too heavy, and when exhaustion overshadows optimism. They describe moments when financial setbacks, unexpected medical issues, or rising expenses make them question whether solutions will ever come. Yet, even in those moments, they cling to the belief that change is possible, because to give up hope would mean accepting a future defined only by struggle. Their resilience shows that hope is not a luxury, but a necessity for survival. It's what keeps families pushing forward, making sacrifices, and believing that tomorrow can be better than today. Another layer of their plea for solutions lies in their belief in the responsibility of leadership. They want leaders who act not out of political calculation, but out of genuine concern for the people they serve. Solutions, in their view, require courage, empathy, and the willingness to prioritize the well-being of citizens over partisan advantage. Russ and Linda acknowledge that they do not have the technical expertise to design policies, but they have the lived experience that should guide those who do. They hope that leaders will use their stories, along with thousands of others, as inspiration to create change rooted in humanity rather than ideology. Ultimately, Russ and Linda's call for hope and solutions is a reflection of the American spirit, the belief that even in difficult times, progress can be made through unity, understanding, and compassionate leadership. Their letter serves as a reminder that behind every policy debate are real families longing for stability, dignity, and opportunity. By sharing their struggles with honesty and vulnerability, they offer a powerful vision of what hope looks like in the face of hardship, and why solutions are not just desired but essential. Their words echo the collective yearning of a nation that wants to believe in a future where fairness, security, and opportunity are not dreams, but realities. Being over financial barriers, Russ and Linda's letter also demonstrates something deeply significant about how personal stories shape national decisions and influence the very heart of policymaking. Their message reflects a truth often overlooked in political discussions. Behind every policy, every debate, and every statistic are real people with real lives, emotions, and experiences. When they share their struggles, they are not just recounting personal challenges. They are contributing to a collective narrative that helps leaders understand the impact of their decisions. Their letter is a reminder that the voices of ordinary citizens are powerful, not because they come from experts or policymakers, but because they represent the lived realities of millions. These individual accounts provide context, depth, and humanity to issues that might otherwise be reduced to numbers in reports or points in a speech. Russ and Linda express that writing to the president was not simply about telling their story, but about participating in the democratic process in one of the most personal ways. They understand that leaders often rely on data, analysis, and advisors, but personal stories help bridge the gap between the theoretical and the tangible. They help leaders see how policies actually play out in the day-to-day lives of Americans. In their letter, they describe how rising healthcare costs, economic uncertainty, and job instability affect them emotionally, physically, and mentally. These descriptions allow leaders to understand the lived consequences of policy choices. When the president reads their letter, he gains insight into how decisions made in Washington affect households like theirs in Texas. This connection is vital because it grounds leadership in empathy and reality. The couple also reflects on how personal stories have historically shaped major national conversations. They talk about how social movements, reforms, and policy shifts often begin with individuals stepping forward and sharing their experiences. Whether it's workers fighting for fair wages, families advocating for healthcare reform, or students speaking about education challenges, it is always personal accounts that open the door to change. Russ and Linda see their letter as part of this tradition. They believe that if enough people speak up, if enough stories are heard, policymakers will be compelled to act. Their letter is an example of civic participation that doesn't require protests, speeches, or legislative battles, just honesty and courage. Additionally, Russ and Linda's story shows how personal narratives can challenge assumptions and change perceptions. Policymakers may think they understand the struggles of the middle class or working families, but hearing directly from people living those struggles paints a more accurate picture. Russ and Linda describe the emotional weight of financial insecurity, the frustration of navigating a complex healthcare system, and the fear of unexpected crises. These details can shift how leaders approach problems, forcing them to consider not only what is technically efficient, but also what is compassionate and fair. Personal stories add nuance and urgency to national discussions. They turn distant issues into immediate priorities because leaders can no longer ignore the human cost behind inaction. Their letter also demonstrates how personal stories help humanize the relationship between citizens and government. Russ and Linda are aware that the president cannot respond to every letter or personally solve every problem, but knowing that their message might be read means something to them. It makes them feel connected, valued, and involved. This sense of connection is important because it strengthens trust in institutions. When leaders take citizen stories seriously, people feel respected. They feel like participants rather than outsiders. Russ and Linda express how empowering it is to know that everyday people have the opportunity to influence national conversations, even in small ways. Their letter becomes a symbol of shared humanity between citizens and leaders, reminding everyone that government is meant to serve the people. They also highlight the ripple effect that one letter can have. Personal stories don't just influence leaders, they inspire other citizens to speak up. When people like Russ and Linda share their struggles, they create a space for others to feel safe sharing theirs. This collective storytelling leads to broader awareness and public pressure for change. It fuels discussions in homes, workplaces, and communities. It leads to news coverage, social media conversations, and grassroots organizing. A single letter can become part of a larger movement demanding solutions and accountability. Furthermore, Russ and Linda's letter serves as proof that ordinary people still hold tremendous power in shaping the direction of the nation. They remind us that democracy thrives when citizens actively participate, share their experiences, and hold leaders accountable. They believe that personal stories add emotional truth to political issues, making it harder for leaders to ignore the urgency of reform. They believe that when leaders hear enough stories like theirs, the invisible struggles of families become impossible to overlook. Ultimately, Russ and Linda's message illustrates that personal narratives are more than forms of expression. They are tools of influence, empathy, and transformation. Their willingness to open up about their challenges helps bring clarity and humanity to national conversations. It encourages leaders to view policy not as abstract solutions, but as lifelines for real people. Their letter stands as a testament to the vital role personal stories play in shaping decisions that define the future of the country. Through their honesty, vulnerability, and determination, Russ and Linda remind us that the voices of ordinary citizens are essential to creating meaningful change, and that every story, no matter how small it may seem, has the potential to shape the nation's path forward.